Welcome back to ICAN. Today we'll be talking to Christopher Olson from Miramont Behavioral Health. We'll be discussing his recovery, how he became a recovery coach, and how he started working at Miramont Health.
Open our hearts, free every soul. The fear inside, you must let it go. Oh, that monster, before it conquers you. Yeah, we all have demons, we fight every day. You get knocked down, but the bell hasn't rang, so keep going. Just stay focused when life seems hopeless. Before life passes you by, you must like a bird with broken wings always. You've gotta reach for the stars. It might seem far. Ooh, don't stop. You gotta try. Oh, 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 you gotta try. Never stop dreaming, even awake. Nothing can stop you from winning this race, so keep going. Just stay focused. Yeah, I am the tiger, I am the pride. Every storm is with the rainbow in the sky. You are golden. If no one else notices, don't stop, keep going. Before life passes you by, you must like a bird with broken wings always. You gotta reach for the stars. It might seem far. Ooh, don't stop. You gotta try. Oh, 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 you gotta try. Keep on trying every day. You gotta try. All you got to do is try. You gotta try. Oh, 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 you gotta try. You gotta try. All you got to do is try. You gotta try.
I think the biggest piece of advice I have for someone going through addiction or thinking about going to rehab is being honest with yourself. Don't be afraid to get help. I think that's the biggest stigma that we're trying to erase is don't be afraid to ask for help.
Today we're interviewing Christopher Olson from Miramont Behavioral Health. Christopher, can you please tell us a little bit about yourself before we go on?
Yes, well, again, thanks for having me here today, Chris. It's great to be here. So, a little bit about myself is I was actually a resident of Wisconsin my entire life. I was born in Madison, had a great childhood, had some great parental support throughout my childhood and currently in my adulthood as well. I went to public schools actually in Waukesha.
Okay.
Met a group of friends, normal childhood experiences, did a lot of sports, a lot of different activities in the neighborhood, had some great relationships, and enjoyed really being with my family. I have
Awesome.
3 sisters I grew up with, so we have great relationships as of today as well. And eventually, I got into high school, and when going to school, I changed group friends, and we'll talk about this in a little bit as well. But I started doing some experimentation with some different kinds of THC drugs, unfortunately.
Okay.
And then I slowly got myself back into recovery and met my wife, actually, my senior year in high school.
Oh, nice.
And we're still married today, and I'll talk about her in just a little bit. She is my rock.
Mhm.
And so eventually, I moved out and started my family with my wife and went back to school and got some education in finance and started my career in finance for the next 8 years.
Now, we've discussed a little bit here. How long were you addicted to alcohol, and how did it come about?
Yeah, so when really the alcohol in my life started around 2008. That was during the Great Recession. I was in the finance industry at that time, in the banking world. And in the Great Recession, a lot of the banks were unfortunately failing, merging, and houses were going upside down in terms of their value because of the mortgage industry at that time. So that's really what kind of started my days of really drinking alcohol, was on the weekends, which became the weeknights, which eventually bled into the weekdays themselves while I was working.
Yep.
I could be what you classified as a functional alcoholic, or at least what I thought was a functional
That's
alcoholic.
what my
of
father
course.
was.
But really also in high school, I was hanging around with a different group of friends, as I mentioned, experimenting with some THC, making some risky decisions in high school as well. So there's really two periods in my life that I look at when my addiction to drugs and alcohol really had an effect on my life wholly. So as far as the length, it was really about 5 years of alcoholism that I would classify myself as, like a daily drinker and needing to consume alcohol on a regular basis.
So when you were a child, there was no real point where you were overusing. You were just
It was more like a socialization thing just to do in school with friends, I guess I would say. I wouldn't say it was overusing by any means, but still, it was creating risky behavior in my life for sure.
okay. And how did you overcome this addiction?
A lot of support. So I have a great family. I have great parental supports. I have siblings that I'm still connected with and have a great relationship with. A lot of interventions from family and friends during these times of my life had to occur. But also just a lot of peer support as well in terms of
How
other
peer
people.
support?
So there's many different forms of peer support. Peer really stands for someone who has lived experience. So whether it's with drugs and or alcohol, it's someone who's really overcoming their own challenges through their own recovery, that's willing to help out and offer support as well. What's worked for them essentially. So when I look at peer support, yeah, it can be friends, it can be people with lived experiences. Really, there's a circle of social people that you put around yourself in terms of support and stuff.
Okay. Were there any agencies that helped you out during that time?
I've had plenty of agencies, yeah, as far as treatment goes. I've worked with them in terms of obviously both residential and outpatient settings. I've worked in terms of doing groups throughout the outpatients in my recovery. I've had a lot of different people come into my life as far as individual therapy and offer support as well. As I mentioned, that peer support factor as well. So whether it's going to AA meetings, NA meetings, have been very beneficial for our support as well.
And what do you think worked the best for your recovery?
So I got really good advice from a great doctor. His name's Dr. Mike Miller. One day when he called me into his office when I was in treatment my second time. And, you know, this is my second time in treatment at this time that I was actually talking with Dr. Mike Miller. And he mentioned to me, Christopher, it seems like you're being a little bit judgmental right now with the people in the milieu. I'm like, well, what are you talking about, Dr. Miller? I'm doing all the work that needs to be done. And he's like, well, you know, you're really, coming across as though you're judging other people right now. And I said, well, I'm doing everything I need to do. They're not doing anything. And it kind of caught me right there. And so really, it's that time in my life that I really worked with a behavioral specialist when I was at treatment that really helped me focus on three things in my life. And that's three things I was always avoiding. Is that I'd always would tell people, I'm okay, I don't need help, and it doesn't hurt. When in fact, it was the exact opposite.
Right.
I needed help. It hurt, and I'm not okay.
Right.
And so to show that vulnerability in my recovery has been a message I've been trying to share with everyone through my story. Recovery is something that we'll talk about a little bit later on, but it's something I'm just very passionate about talking to people in terms of their own struggles and what it can do in terms of their life with the impact it has on mine.
Now, during this recovery, how did it affect your family?
It affects a lot of the relationships with the family. There's only so many times I could tell my family that I wouldn't consume any more alcohol, only to go back the next day and start drinking again.
I know how that goes.
Several hundred times I imagine I said that to my wife and to my children and to my parents and other support units in my family. And it was just a chronic disease that I was battling with at that time in my life, and I couldn't get over that. I just couldn't get over a day without drinking alcohol. And that was 5 years of my life that I used. So as far as our relationships goes, Chris, it really damaged a lot of them. I mean, the trust is that it wasn't there anymore. Trust is one of those things that it's so hard for us to sometimes build, but so easy for us to lose, in a sense. So I really had to work myself through my recovery program. And the way I did that is with a living amends. My words weren't any good anymore for people, so I really needed to show people that I could actually do this, and I had to do this one day at a time, one step at a time, essentially, with my recovery. And so my actions through my recovery is what really rebuilt those relationships and stuff. So yeah, the trust was definitely lost in a lot of relationships. However, I feel like that trust is stronger now than ever in terms of like where I am today in my recovery. So I can be vulnerable and I have a clean slate. So it's a good start over for me.
Now, during this time for your family, was there any support for them?
Yeah, there was Al-Anon they could go to as far as groups goes and stuff. There's also people that would support them through churches and stuff that they were going to as well. Definitely there's support out there in the community for people that are family members of dealing with someone who might be struggling with an addiction or alcohol, like my case. So absolutely.
And did your family reach out to those?
Yes, it did.
And did it help?
It did.
It did? Okay,
Yep.
great.
It gave them a good set of boundaries, I believe, in terms of allowing them to create healthy boundaries with me through recovery.
Okay.
So
What helped you the most on your road to recovery?
a lot of things. So when I was actively in my days of alcoholism and addiction, I've had so many interventions from so many different people, family, friends, pastors, various community members, and I just wasn't ready to listen to them at that time in my life. So I just really wasn't focused on anything other than the one thing I wanted in my life, and that was unfortunately alcohol. So recovery really brought a lot about me in terms of like what it is that I needed for support, and it's clearly that social circle of people I wanted around me that needed to be around me and stuff. It's like creating those healthy relationships and stuff. Peer support is really a big component of my recovery. As I've already mentioned, it's people's lived experience. So to go to meetings and discuss topics, discuss my week, some struggles I might be having, there's a lot of common things that we have in each other, so we can really bounce ideas and maybe some thoughts and some opportunities for growth with each other. So that helps out a lot. But some of the biggest relationships that I have right now in my recovery that help me the most is God. Is really the foundation of my recovery. I feel myself really getting closer to God, throughout my recovery. I also have an amazing wife who is my rock. She has always been consistent with me through my recovery and even to today. So it's always someone I can kind of go back to if I'm ever having any struggles and just talk to her on a daily basis about what's going on. I got beautiful children at home that still support me. And of course, my parents. So
Backtracking a little, when did you realize that you had a problem?
So that's just it. It's like, when was my rock bottom, right? So many people say you got to hit rock bottom or make a change. I see that two different ways. I can see definitely hitting the rock bottom, needing to, and definitely not needing to hit that. And that's something I'm trying to help people not hit, is the rock bottom. So when I see I needed to change is when, unfortunately, was my time that I got incarcerated. So I had my first and only DUI, and was incarcerated and needed to make a change in my life at this time. So this is where I went from pretty much pre-contemplation to contemplation overnight, saying I needed to get this. So the motivation was just there. I was ready to do it my second time through treatment, and was clearly ready to identify, like, these are the areas of my life that I need to work on. And it was it. I mean, with my relationships at this time right now in my life, this is in 2015, and this was pretty much it. So, I mean, it was either I take recovery or my relationships might be over at this point in my life. So I needed to have that recovery.
Being that alcohol is such a big portion of society, especially in Wisconsin, unfortunately, how do you survive the day-to-day? I mean, most events contain alcohol. How do you get past that?
So early on in my recovery, it was challenging. So I needed to surround myself with a healthy support unit when I was going to outings and stuff. For example, going to a Brewers game.
Yeah.
It's everywhere.
Yeah.
Just even the smell of it would sometimes be activating to me early on in my recovery. But as I mentioned, Chris, I was and still am so motivated for recovery that it is nothing that even comes across my mind. Whether it's I step foot into a store that sells alcohol, or if I go into an establishment like a restaurant, it doesn't come across my mind as far as even ordering or taking a sip of it if someone else's drink. Again, it's just part of my recovery is really being motivated. So having a clear, distinct plan in my treatment plan and obviously my recovery plan, like, these are steps I need to take.
I see you work for Miramont Behavioral Health. What do you do there?
I love Miramont Behavioral Health. It's a great organization. So I am so blessed to be a community liaison and community health navigator for Miramont. I travel to several different communities throughout several different counties on a weekly basis, and I get to have great relationships with doctors, therapists, various social service organizations, various groups in terms of what's going on in the community, like some local YMCAs, for example. And I try to navigate difficult roads that some of the members in the community might be having when it comes to behavioral health and substance misuse problems. So trying to really create like a tailored plan for that community. And so what we do are sometimes we do community needs assessments and stuff. So I'll go around and I'll ask people some specific questions on, what's going on specifically at their practice or their organization that they're seeing in the community that the community needs. And we take this information back to our leadership at Miramont, and then we develop specific plans as far as what we can do as an organization to help really curb those problems within that community. So sometimes I might do workshops. For example, I'm doing a workshop next week, Tuesday, at Waukesha North High School in their consumer science class when they're talking about pharmacology and the medications used for addiction, of course. A lot of students there are going into the healthcare field, so I'll talk to them about things about being the fields that I was in when I was in this field as well, when it comes to being a counselor or a coach. But there's also many other fields that you can do as well. I do life skills workshops at Salvation Army in Waukesha every other Monday night with the guys there as well, talking about various opportunities to build their wellness plans and stuff. There's just a lot of things that are coming around in terms of opportunity and growth, whether it's at the school level, whether it's at the community organizational level, whether it's in hospitals, ERs. I'm in on a regular basis talking with teams there as well. Like I was at Watertown Regional Medical earlier today. So yeah, we talk with various community members and stuff about what's going on and stuff, and trying to really chart a path for people to get into recovery and stuff. As I mentioned, I am a peer, so being in recovery is I can also offer that intervention piece as well to these accounts that we go and visit. So if someone's struggling with that pre-contemplation stage of change, I'd like to come in there and talk to them about recovery and stuff and see what it
Now,
looks like.
you said you started out in finance.
Yeah.
How did you jump from finance to where you are?
It's always the greatest question they get asked, So first of all, when I was in finance and I was struggling with alcohol, it was very common that the average person on the street would see me like at the gas station filling my gas with and being in a suit, right? You would never picture at that time that I probably had a problem with alcohol, other than the fact that it looked like I had my life in order because I was always wearing a mask, when actually everything was falling apart. So finances have always been an interest of mine from high school on. I've always loved numbers, math, accounting has always been one of my highest career aptitude tests I've gotten in high school. So I wanted to kind of follow that and get into finance. So I love looking at spreadsheets and numbers and all that good stuff on a daily basis and stuff. And so I decided to go work for some retail banks for a little while, as a personal banker, as branch management and business development. And, really liked it. I did a year into insurance sales as well with annuities, and it was good work. I really enjoyed, overall, essentially the customer service that I was providing. But 5 years in, 4 years in, it was stressful. As I mentioned, with the Great Recession going on in 2008, banks were merging, failing. Things were not good in the mortgage industry at this time. A lot of the houses were upside down because their housing value plummeted below what their actual mortgage was at. So people were really upside down in their mortgages at this time. So it was very stressful for a lot of people, including myself and my family, because we were young at this time. So that's where, I always debate, and so do doctors at this time, which came first, the depression or the alcoholism. It's like the chicken and egg scenario that we deal with on a regular basis. And so I essentially then at this point started to again consume alcohol on a weekend, weeknight, weekday basis, and was doing my job, unfortunately, while also struggling with alcohol at that time. And so when I hit my rock bottom in late 2015, as I mentioned, I knew I needed to change my life around. So that treatment, the second time through, after talking with Dr. Mike Miller and really getting things straight in my head and what I wanted to do, I decided that I wanted to go back to school and get my AODA certification, which stands for Alcohol and Other Drug Abuse certification. And while I was going to Gateway, I got a career at a local shelter for the men that were homeless and worked with them for a year as an attendant and did some groups there as well. Started to really enjoy that group experience when working with these guys and decided I really wanted to go into this field full time. So this is what I devoted myself to. So I worked at both a residential for a couple of years, and there I became a recovery coach, which we'll talk about in just a little bit.
Okay.
I also became a SACIT, or which is known as a substance abuse counselor in training.
Okay.
And then I left there and went to an outpatient setting in the Waukesha area at this time, and worked there as 5 years as an operations manager. So what really led me to this is just really the passion and joy of recovery and seeing people every day.
I know we kind of talked about what a recovery coach. Yeah, that's what you say you do.
Mm-hmm.
Can you delve into it a little deeper about being a recovery coach?
So recovery coaching is still relatively like a new term.
Right.
It was really coined in 2006 by a gentleman named William White. William White is actually a very intelligent man who's been in the research field for decades, 30 plus years, has devoted his life to really pioneering the new recovery advocacy movement. So I've actually had the privilege of having 2 virtual conversations with William White over the years, and he has so many white papers that are out there, not named after his last name, it's just white paper. You know what white paper is. So basically, he has so much research that it would take so many years just to go through and read all of this research. He's just such a intelligent man. But recovery coaching, the platform that I got trained on is called CCAR, and I'll explain that in just a moment. So in 1998, Bob Savage started the CCAR platform for training because it stands for Connecticut Community for Addiction and Recovery.
Okay.
So essentially what it is down in Connecticut, over in Connecticut, they had all these recovery centers that started out, and they had all these volunteers there. And they wanted to do good for the community, but they really didn't, unfortunately, know enough about actual lived experience because these were just volunteers. So they didn't really know enough about addiction. So that's why they created this training for these people within these recovery centers. And so CCAR since has really developed itself globally, really as far as developing these recovery coaches, is one of the most premier recovery coaching platforms in the United States right now. And I had the privilege of being trained in this in February of 2018 when I was working at my residential job as a substance use counselor in training.
Okay.
So CCAR really came to the fore with two questions. One is like, can I help you in your recovery now? And two, can the recovery community become organized? And so that's really what I delved myself into when I looked at recovery coaching and got trained through CCAR to become a recovery coach. And it's utilized in so many different settings. I could be in the ER, for example.
Okay.
Someone recently overdosed. There are some emergency rooms that are going to call in a recovery coach, which I've done before, and assist someone who's in the ER who has recently overdosed. There's also the ability for people to have recovery coaches in treatment settings. So they're scattered throughout in many different settings when it comes to that treatment platform and community services as well. So yeah, I mean, really, there's two lanes that, you got to look at. You have the treatment professionals, you have your doctors, your therapists. Right. Those are the individuals that are going to treat and diagnose an individual. That is not our job as recovery coaches. We are not therapists. We are not doctors. What we are, Chris, is we are advocates. We're motivators. We are cheerleaders. Okay. We're going to sit with someone while they're even struggling until they're ready to get the help they need. That's being empathetic. That's showing you like you have empathy for an individual, of course. So those are the moments that, recovery coaches are highly effective. It doesn't need to be someone with lived experience because, again, it's a platform that can train anyone who wants to assist. So it's really a great opportunity for anyone who's like really wanting to get engaged in recovery and help people out with struggles. Learn a fabulous model for recovery and actually utilize that.
That's really awesome. What do you think is your most meaningful story, either to do with your recovery or with your clients?
There's so many stories, Chris, that I could share in terms of my own.
Well, just give us your most meaningful to you.
Really is the impact that recovery has on my life.
Okay.
I truly feel like I'm living a life better than I was destined to live through recovery because of all those character defects I'm working on a regular basis. So I'll never live a perfect life. I know that for a fact. However, I do know that I'm living a life better now than I was before through recovery because, again, as I mentioned, I have a clean slate. And while I still make mistakes, I don't have to brush those mistakes or put them under the rug anymore. I can admit to them and move on and stuff. So,
have you made any mistakes?
I always make mistakes every day. There's not a day that goes by that I don't make mistakes, but I do it with genuine humility, and I'm very humbled with my experiences with people. And whether it's not saying the right words or saying the wrong messages or unfortunately doing something like that, it's easy to correct and move on from. So,
as we wind down, where would you like to see yourself in the future?
I want to continue in this field. I'm very passionate about Miramont and the message that we're giving to the community right now. So there's a lot of opportunity for growth with the organization. Since Miramont is actually part of Summit Behavioral Health, which is a much larger organization that has 26 recovery centers throughout the country and 12 acute hospitals as well, is to grow with an organization that I really have genuine compassion for and have a feeling of sense of belonging as well. I want to continue to really be engaged with the communities that I'm currently working with, grow upon other communities as well, and keep spreading the message of recovery to people. I could see myself doing this for another 20 plus years for sure. This is truly a passionate field that has a lot of opportunity for other people to get involved in and really make a change for the better for their communities as a whole. The growth, the opportunity, the experience, it's all there.
What would you suggest for someone who's just starting out in their recovery to be able to help out with their recovery? I guess that's kind of worded weird, but
no, it actually makes great sense, Chris. It's always the challenge of the pre-contemplation stage. Like, do I have a problem? Do I not have a problem? There's always a science that's always behind a lot of what we do in terms of our research in the medical field. How much is too much to drink? Is it 1, 2 a night? Is it 3 or 4 a night? If I stop drinking for a few days and start it up again, do I really have a problem? Do I not have a problem? It's really to reach out to organizations like Miramont and talk with them if you really feel like you have a problem, and talk with one of our professionals, and discuss as far as what you might be experiencing and stuff. Now,
Excuse me.
the fact is that people that are in the pre-contemplation stage really don't have that motivation to even make that call. I didn't want to even admit I had a problem. I actually was just fine and dandy and thought nothing was wrong and wanted to continue on with my life the way it was. But, obviously, as I know now, all the bumps I was hitting along the way were some serious problems and some stress relationships I was creating. So, yeah, clearly it's just a matter of them getting motivated and wanting to ask for the help. Peer support is a really big thing that I'm really a firm believer in. So if someone is struggling, have them reach out to a peer, a local organization,
Okay.
and have them connect with that individual as far as support goes to give them the first steps into recovery.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to say before we head out?
First of all, again, thanks again for allowing me
you're
to
very
be
welcome.
here.
I thank you for being here.
It's truly a great opportunity to talk about recovery. This is something that I enjoy doing on a regular basis with my message and stuff throughout various platforms and stuff. But, I want people to know that they're not alone. A lot of us feel isolated in today's world.
Yeah, definitely.
Through the pandemic, it really has disturbed a lot of the adolescents in terms of their own mental health. With what's going on in terms of obviously being isolated, not socializing anymore, or even just using social media as a way of socializing.
Social media has become so much a part
Yeah.
of life itself. Do you think in our area we have a big drug problem?
It varies on the communities. I really think based on the community as far as the resources, Chris, that's going to determine the level of severity.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is the farther north and west that we travel in this great state of Wisconsin, the less and less resources are available.
Yeah, definitely.
The less that's out there in terms of peer support, in terms of therapists, in terms of doctors, hospitals, various things that would help people out with these problems, they don't have them there. And so, one of the things that we do at Miramont is offer our intensive outpatient programming virtually. So if people can jump online, that might be a way to assist them with a virtual IOP.
Okay.
Now, there's a lot of other problems that are occurring, obviously, in our societies that determine the level of severity. So, obviously, with crime being one of the things might be coming up in communities as well. Obviously, that are related sometimes to substance misuse problems. It really depends in terms of what support is in that community and how quickly can that community take action.
Yeah.
Before this problem gets way out of control and stuff. So, there is some communities that maybe alcohol is advertised a little bit too much.
Mm-hmm.
And there's obviously some communities that have curbed it a little bit. So, it's the ease of access to get to alcohol right now is pretty easy for people to get to, whether it's at gas stations or other stores. They can purchase it pretty much anywhere and everywhere they want. So it's really kind of getting with, again, local officials and talking about these situations and having these conversations about opportunities to improve. I do think things are going to get better. I really do, because there are a lot of great people out there with a lot of heart into this recovery that are trying to make a change. So
yeah, I've been noticing that as I've been doing my interviews. Like I told you, this is my 21st show, and the people that I have interviewed and talked to, it's been mind-blowing to me.
yeah,
Because it just started small for me and it's been building. So I just want to thank you again for being here today.
yeah, it's great.
And I think we could probably go on for hours and hours, but I have a limited time, and hopefully we can have you back again.
I'd love to be back, Chris. Thank you so much for having me here today.
Thank you, Christopher.
Thank you.